When the Americans pulled out of Afghanistan, allowing the Taliban to take over, an enormous cache of arms, ammunition and aircraft fell directly into the hands of the new terrorist rulers of that country. Among that weapons stash were at least 35 US Black Hawk helicopters, legendary military helicopters that have been deployed all over the world in conflict scenarios and are feared for their capabilities. Well, the bad news is the largest non-US fleet of those helicopters is now in the Taliban's hands. And a new video, the one on your screen right now, demonstrates that the Taliban intend, at least to try, to use these helicopters. Take a look. A legendary American UH-60 Black Hawk helicopter taxiing across the Kandahar airfield. Not an unusual sight in Afghanistan, except the men operating the chopper are said to be Taliban members. This clip, released by Russian state media, identifies the helicopter as a US Army UH-60 Black Hawk. Over 35 Black Hawk helicopters supplied by the US to the Afghan army were left abandoned in the rapid collapse following the US exit. In the turbulence that followed, open source intelligence suggests 9 such helicopters were flown to Uzbekistan by fleeing Afghan government pilots. That would mean at least 25 Black Hawk helicopters are still in Taliban hands. The video, only a minute long, only shows the Black Hawk on the ground and not taking off. It is not clear if the Taliban pilots managed to thereafter fly the chopper. What is clear, however, is that the Taliban is looking to make use of these advanced military helicopters. But two big questions stand out. First, does the Taliban even have credible pilots? Answering that only days ago, the Taliban said it would be hiring existing pilots from the collapsed Afghan military.
About previous army and military, that is collapsed, finished. So now if we want to hire them and bring them back to this rank, so definitely we will call them, and we need them because they have high training. Most of them got training in Turkey and Germany and England, so we need them and we will call them to get back to their positions.
The second big question, flying is only part of air combat. What about maintenance, spares and learning how to use these choppers for military operations? Well, the Chinese Harbin Z-20 helicopter is a reverse-engineered copy of this very Black Hawk. And Chinese friendship with the Taliban means they could theoretically get help with maintenance, spares and flying training if needed. Black Hawks are legendary helicopters which across variants have served the US and several other militaries since the 1970s. Updated versions of this highly reliable helicopter continue to be supplied to customers across the world. India itself will be receiving the newest version of the Black Hawk called the MH-60R from the US later this year. The helicopters also received title credit in Ridley Scott's gritty battle drama Black Hawk Down, a story of a notoriously mishandled US mission in Somalia. But with 25 Black Hawks down in Afghanistan, the Taliban has overnight become one of the largest operators of the helicopter type outside the US. It's a long, difficult road, but this new video shows they're taking their first steps. Bureau Report, India Today. Helicopters paid for by US taxpayers, the public in the US, now in the hands of the enemies of the United States. I imagine how American people feel watching that video. Let's just summarize for you and tell you a little bit more about why this is so significant. The Taliban has gotten its hands on a sizable fleet of modern UH-60 Black Hawk helicopters. 35 UH-60 Black Hawks were left behind in Afghanistan when the US pulled out. This is a medium-lift US military utility helicopters that has been deployed in all manner of conflict zones around the world. There are many non-US operators as well. Its missions include aerial assault, troop ferrying, troop transport, and also armed escort. Its missions also include, very importantly, search and rescue, as well as command and control, which are crucial to military operations. Now, 9 of these Black Hawks fled from Afghanistan once the Taliban was taking over, and they've gone to Uzbekistan. So these were Afghan National Army pilots who took these helicopters and fled across the border into Uzbekistan, and that's why it leaves about 25 to 26 Black Hawks remaining with the Taliban. The Taliban is also, as you saw in that report just now, hiring Afghan Black Hawk pilots to operate these. And even if they have a problem with training or spares support or maintenance or any kind of help, China has actually reverse engineered these helicopters already. The Z-20 is a Chinese version of the Black Hawk, and therefore they can extend a helping hand to the Taliban to get these birds off the ground. So that is our special report on the Black Hawk. It's not so simple that they just have the Black Hawks and operate them. There are questions, but we've tried to clarify and answer those for you. Meanwhile, on the ground in Afghanistan, there's a big terror threat alert at the Kabul airport. 4 countries have issued near identical advisories to their citizens who are still in Afghanistan. The US, UK, Australia and Denmark have warned their citizens not to go anywhere near Kabul's Hamid Karzai International Airport. Australia's advisory warns of a terror attack near the Kabul airport and urges its citizens to leave that area under all circumstances. Similar advisory issued by the UK says that the situation in Afghanistan remains volatile and also warns of a terror attack possibly at the airport. The United States and Denmark have also warned their citizens in Afghanistan not to go anywhere near the Kabul airport. The US Secretary of State Antony Blinken said that as many as 1,500 American citizens still await evacuation from Afghanistan. The deadline to pull out completely is August the 31st, and it is closing. An Australian citizen was beaten up and brutalized by the Taliban as this citizen tried to flee Afghanistan in these unsettling, upsetting visuals. We advise viewer discretion, but this is a story that needs to be told. Listen into this audio right outside the Kabul airport, and it will make sense to you why countries are so concerned about their citizens near the Kabul airport. Take a look.
They hit me, but I'm Australian citizen. They hit me, but see this happened to me when I was crossing airport.
People are directly under threat and being savaged by the Taliban terrorists in Kabul and elsewhere. You're wondering about Indian citizens? Well, the Indian government today came out to say that most Indian citizens have been evacuated already, but there are several still in country and are in the process of being pulled out. Thousands of Afghans are in a desperate bid to leave that war-torn country as well. Let's not forget them. Since the Taliban took over Afghanistan, more than 30 lakh people were forced to flee their homes. Our next report tells you where these people will go now that the Taliban has taken over and what the options are in front of them.
These images might haunt the world for generations to come. People clinging onto planes in desperate bid to escape Afghanistan as Taliban takes over. Some even climbed onto planes while some tied themselves down to the landing gear only to meet their fatal end. In another heart-wrenching video where Afghans were seen passing their babies on to the United States Army in hope that their children at least get a chance to a better life, at least they escape from the claws of the Taliban. So the big question here is, where are these people headed to? Which countries are now willing to accept Afghan refugees? Let's tell you how the world is now responding to the plight of Afghans to flee the country. The United States, it recently announced a Priority 2 designation in which Afghan nationals and their eligible family members get access to the United States Refugee Admission Program. As per the reports, US will take over 10,000 refugees, and this number includes mostly those who have worked with the United States government in Afghanistan. The UK government has now announced that it can take up to 20,000 refugees, and priority will be given, of course, to women, children and religious minorities. Canada, on the other hand, has also agreed to resettle at least 20,000 refugees, focusing on women leaders and government workers. While many Western countries are now committed to protect Afghan refugees, several countries are being skeptical about the same. Haunted by the migrant influx in 2015 during the Syrian war, European Union has now been giving mixed signals on this. Pakistan initially allowed maximum number of Afghan refugees, but now the country clarifies that it can no longer take any more refugees in, and hence it will seal its borders. Iran has now set up emergency tents in 3 provinces that border Afghanistan, and as per the United Nations, Iran is already hosting about 3.5 million Afghans. A small Central Asian country, Tajikistan, has now confirmed to take up to 1 lakh refugees, and Qatar is now serving as a key transit point to these refugees. Countries like Albania, Kosovo, who have now agreed to provide assistance such as temporary hosting of Afghan refugees. Here are the countries who have refused flatly to take in Afghan refugees. How is India now responding to the refugee crisis? Considering the present circumstances, India has now introduced a new category of e-visas to Hindus and Sikhs of Afghanistan.
Meanwhile, local Afghans are continuing to line up outside the Kabul airport, desperate to get out of the country come what may. Women with little children have been camping outside the airport in these latest images in the hope that they will get evacuated by US or other forces. India Today now shows you what the airport looks like. On top of your screen, you see the military side of the airport. The Taliban have established their presence along the military side too. The Taliban have also taken control of the civilian side of the airport, so it's basically under Taliban control. They also control the road leading up to the airport as well as the main entrance. They've taken complete control by deploying their forces, including their special unit, the Badri 313, who are visible in many images if you look, especially on the roads leading up to the airport. Now, Western nations are scrambling to remove hundreds of citizens. They've issued advisories about the airport, but many of their citizens are still in the country, and Afghan allies from the war-torn country, as deadline for withdrawal of the US troops from the country is approaching fast, August the 31st. The US has stated that around 1,500 Americans are still in Afghanistan waiting to be pulled out. This is the situation for them.